Okay, I think you guys should be able to hear me here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and this is going to be another live stream in my what I'm now calling my CHILLPREP series, which involves me listening to some LoFi, some chill hop, and doing some gaming stuff, whether it's prepping for a game, doing some world building, game design, making pre-gens, all that kind of stuff. So we did a live stream last week where we made some pre-generated characters for the new version of the Harbinger playtest. This week, I put out a vote on Facebook as well as Twitter, and had people vote on what they wanted to see me do this week. And the two options were game design and world building. And the far and away winner was world building. It was like 70% people voted for world building. So we're going to do some world building today. Next week we might do something different. We might continue. Each, live stream will probably be focusing on a different thing. So it's not like you need to sort of keep up with it or whatever. As you can see, we're going to do some world building for Harbinger today. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to talk about. I have some ideas, and I'm going to look to you guys in the chat to maybe help me cultivate these ideas, focus in on what you want to see me work on, and we can kind of go from there. So the most recent Harbinger playtest, which you can check out at harbingerrpg.com. That's harbingerrpg.com. There's a link to the playtest there, as well as some information about the world of Harbinger. We got some new lore in the most recent Harbinger playtest. Not a huge dump of lore, but just some more information about the moons, about the septs, which are these noble houses that control the known orbits of Bastion, as well as some stuff about the various religions, as well as the different sort of like subspecies of humans. So you learn a little bit about the Voidborn and about the Forgeborn and stuff like that. So before we get started here, let's go to the chat really quick. I'm realizing I should have the chat like in a window on the screen, but that's all right. I think the chat is actually retained now by YouTube for live streams, so it's all good. Prozac, this is a cool page out of Merles' book, Crowdsourcing Ideas. Love it. Yeah, I love, Mike Merles does a weekly stream called the Mike Merles Happy Fun Hour, and it's all about game design and designing classes and subclasses and stuff, and it's really cool, like, insight into his sort of, like, POV and how he does things, and he always, like, gets ideas from the chat and stuff. So I really enjoy that a lot. Let's see here. Mark Wright, can you touch upon where you came up with the Haldrathine elves and Mitsurium? Yeah, I can do that really briefly. So the Haldrathine elves are inspired by a lot of different things, but I would say probably the main thing was I've always been a huge fan of the Protoss from StarCraft, and I thought it would be neat to have a kind of like almost like Greco-Roman type culture in a fantasy world where they had psionic abilities, and that's kind of how it started, and then it grew from there and kind of became its own thing. And so Mitsurium was, I wanted a kind of a liquid metal that could be hardened and made liquid again, and so Mitsurium was kind of created from that. And you know, giving Dice and the Provokers the Mitsurium that he used to make the mask, and then later his staff and stuff was, you know, that definitely built upon it. So it started out as a way for me to put Protoss-esque culture into a fantasy world, and then it kind of grew from there. So yeah. Marquise, hey man, he says, so Overwatch has a new hero that's a sentient hamster and a wrecking ball mech. I'm not joking. How do you get this in Harbinger? Yeah, I know you're not joking. I just watched the video of it, and as ridiculous as that character is, he looks really fun to play. Honestly, I'm not sure about the sentient hamster part, but like the mech wrecking ball thing with the grappling hook and stuff is like, that's possible. You could do that in Harbinger pretty easily with weapon mods. David Weaver says, is there a moon creator? I know there's a moon creator. Is there going to be a planet, asteroid, etc. creator? So David, there's the moon generator in the Harbinger playtest has, you know, options for asteroids and stuff in it. The only planet in the known orbits is Bastion, which is a gas giant. Everything else is moons. Marquise says, is that a Haori you bought? I don't know what a Haori is, Marquise. Hang on, I'm gonna Google it. Hopefully it's nothing weird. What? Oh no, that looks super comfy though. Dude, I would wear that. No, this is like it's like a cardigan. I wear it sometimes when I'm at home and it's a little chillier in the house. It seems weird because it's been so hot, but it's actually a little cool today. Just real quick, are the Haldrathine at all connected by the Kala hive mind like Protoss? They're not connected by a hive mind, but they can communicate with each other telepathically. And they do have like an empathetic sort of link with each other. We'll go into it a little bit more in the Provokers, I think. Macronomicon, the name Mitsurium, or however you spell it, has a lilt to it that makes me want to say it over and over again. Yeah, it's actually a Japanese word. It's derived from a Japanese word. This is how you spell it. Mitsurium. The two Z's in Japanese has like a T. It's like a TS, like sit sound. So I took like a semester of Japanese in high school. All right, guys, so let's get started here. So we're gonna make some stuff for Harbinger here. So let's bulleted lists are your friends. So I'm gonna bullet out some stuff that I've been thinking about for Harbinger. So the first thing that's like kind of chief on my mind is the Fadeless, which is Alzarine's secret police. Just kind of fleshing out what their deal is, what their organization is, what kind of things they do, what they're capable of, that kind of thing. There's also the Sovereign Standing Army, which is so this exists in a lot of cultures, but specifically in the Mongol Empire, there was this army that was derived from pulling people from all of the different clans, but they served, you know, the Great Khan. And it was like, yes, they belonged to separate clans and they served separate khans, but the Great Khan would be able to call them and muster this great army if he needed to. And I like the idea that the Sovereign in Harbinger has something similar, where they have like an elite standing army that's like maybe like a few thousand soldiers that are all from different septs that swear fealty to the Sovereign. And so it's one of those things where it's like, if you were from Sept Larkin and you served in the Sovereign's standing army, and Sept Larkin decided to rebel against the Sovereign, and then the Sovereign called for its standing army to help defend itself, what would you, as a warrior of Sept Larkin, do? Where would your loyalty lie? So I really like that idea. I kind of want to play with that a little bit. And then, what was the other thing? There was one other thing. Drift Market. I wanted to talk about the Drift Market, which is like this big, it's like a bunch of ships and asteroids like lashed together, and it's like this, it's like the big like bazaar of Harbinger. It's like where you go. It doesn't really belong to any sept. Sept Larkin kind of controls it, but it's sort of this almost like a city-state sort of thing. That's kind of a cool area to explore, and I was maybe thinking about delving into that a little bit. So those are the three things I kind of want to talk about and kind of develop a little bit, and we can go from there. So David Weaver, cool beans. I did get the go-ahead to download the playtest, but I'm slow and haven't yet. Sorry. No worries, man. I hope you enjoy it. Marquis says, Nahuatl, I think I'm saying that right. The Aztec language has the same thing, but with TZ instead of ZZ. Very cool. Okay, awesome. Geeks on Dice, will there be a GIF-like race in Harbinger? No. There's only playable humans in Harbinger, and that's kind of a deliberate design decision from me. Like, there are other species and races like the Scrug, but I don't like the idea of them being playable races. I like that it's like human struggles. So, but there are Voidborn, Forgeborn, Moonborn. So, also I watched an interview with Chris Perkins, and they name dropped you and Harbinger, Matt. Oh, interesting. I did. I saw that Jeremy Crawford mentioned me at Origins as one of the people that worked on Dungeon of the Mad Mage. But I hadn't heard that Chris Perkins name dropped me and Harbinger. That's pretty cool, actually. You'll have to let me know which interview that was. Geeks on Dice. Yeah, and then Marquis says which interview. Yeah, I'd very much like to see that. That's I will confess to watching the interview with Jeremy Crawford where he mentions me way too many times, because it's very strange and very cool. So anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Let's get into this, and let me know if you want the music louder, quieter, whatever. I'm drinking, this is grapefruit Italian soda. So it's got that nice bitter hit of the grapefruit, but it's like slightly carbonated. Oh, so good. All right, let me close WhatsApp here. Okay. So let's talk about the Fadeless first. So I have a few different ideas for the Fadeless. The first is that they are secret police spies operating. I'm going to spell this wrong. Autonomously. Operating autonomously from Alzarine. Here, I'll turn the music up a little bit for you guys. Uniting the clans, isn't that what the Corruptor did with the Gavalt in Season 1 of the Provokers? Yes, he sort of violently united the clans of the Gavalt to serve under him, yeah. Geeks on Dice, I posted it on AbTab a week or two ago. They were talking about the new Waterdeep books and the Stream of Many Eyes, and it was Jeremy Crawford in the interview, I think. My bad. Yeah, I did see that one where Jeremy mentioned me. That was cool. That's a little too loud for me, actually. There we go. Yeah, it was, yeah, interview with Jeremy and Chris. Yeah, and Jeremy mentioned he was basically just listing off the people that had worked on the book as freelancers, and so they mentioned, James Hake and James Intrasacco, and the editors that I worked with, Wes Snyder and Scott Fitzgerald Gray, which they were great. It was really cool to work with them, and that was something I really couldn't talk about until recently. But Wes Snyder, he was big guy over at Paizo. It was really cool. Meeting him was really neat. He's a really nice guy. And then Scott Gray is just an impeccable editor, just a titan of freelance editing. He's worked on so many D&D books and just books in general in the industry. So it was really cool to be able to work with Scott Gray. Okay, so there's secret police and spies. The thing that is inspiring me with the Fadeless mostly is the I'm gonna forget their names, but they're the secret police in Ba Sing Se. Hang on, let me look it up. There's a name for him. In the Avatar, the Dai Li, yeah, that's right. The Dai Li, they're like secret police in Ba Sing Se in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that's kind of inspiring to me, because they're kind of like, they serve Alzarene, but they're like separate from Alzarene, and they're kind of trusted to act in Alzarene's best interest, but it's almost like I don't want to know what you're doing, like just protect the sovereign sort of thing. They have they're also high-ranking members are blind. They have lost their sight but see Astra auras. We should also put powerful Mancers. Marquis said, on a scale of Stalin to 1984, how controlling is Alzarene? Definitely not 1984 level. Alzarene is... Well, they used to be a lot more controlling. And I would say that they have tightened their grip a little bit recently, just because they're feeling threatened with the fact that the Harbinger has shown up, that they're kind of in a disadvantageous position. The other Seps are sort of like starting to think like, why do you get claim on the Harbinger? We should have a piece of this too. Alzarene right now is led by a very young empress who was like 5th in line of succession. And the only reason why she took the throne is because all the other heirs killed each other in a war to try and get the throne. And this happened just a few years before the Harbinger showed up. It was called the Alzarene War of Succession, or the Tharkestrian War of Succession. And this was somebody who was never planning on being in power, but she was sort of, put in the position where she had to, because her stepmother, this empress regent, and her siblings got into a war and ended up killing each other, and that's why she holds the throne. So the empress herself, is less concerned with control and tightening her grip, but the people around her and her advisors, and especially the Fadeless, are very interested in pushing Alzarene control, pushing the power and control that the Sovereign has. And so she's almost like a puppet leader, but only in that she didn't want to be Empress and now she is. So I imagine that she's a character that will probably rise to the occasion at some point, but right now she's only been in power for a couple of years. So, and she's in power a couple of years, and then the Harbinger shows up and it's like, hey, crash course, kid, here's how to lead, an empire, basically. So high-ranking members of the Fadeless are blind. They've basically given up their sight, but can see the auras of living creatures. They have like Daredevil sight, essentially, which makes them a little unsettling, but also incredibly like they can see you no matter where you are. They're incredibly what's the word I'm looking for? But they're they're just very perceptive. They see everything. They're spy masters, and this sight that they have helps them in that work as spy masters. The second I read Secret Police, I thought of a force using the astral projection spells to spy and build weird magic networks with each other. Even when they're not there, they're watching. Yes, absolutely. Like, these are powerful Astra wielders, and so they are using a lot of like yellow-based Astra to see into people's minds, to project themselves across the known orbits and spy. And it's, you know, it's one of the reasons why other septs and other nobles would employ mancers who could detect things like that. So, you know, if someone is projecting themselves across the known orbits to spy on a secret meeting, you employ mancers to essentially put magical walls around you while you're having this meeting, or just standing by with their astrocyte on, like trying to detect if there's someone like spying on the meeting. So it's very like clandestine sort of stuff. Yeah, definitely some Earth Nation stuff. David Weaver says, so do they all have different things, or do they have signature abilities? Example of signature abilities: they can phase through walls or have minor teleportation powers. So I mean, that's you can do that stuff with Astra spells. So yeah, they can do that kind of stuff, like teleporting, phasing through walls, seeing through things. Like, that's all stuff you can do with Astra spells. So yes, absolutely. So I want to come up with kind of like the hierarchy of the Fadeless. I don't want to super set anything in stone or like make it super concrete. So because I want it to kind of be like this sort of mysterious, like esoteric sort of like organization where no one really knows who's in charge. No one knows who's the leader. Like, they're just there, and oftentimes you don't know that they're there. Okay. So let's use yellow Astra abilities to peer into minds and spy across the known orbits. Other nobles and powerful figures employ mancers to combat Fadeless interjection. It might even be this thing where like the Fadeless aren't even like an official organization, but there's something that like people know exists. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's like you know, everyone knows about the CIA, but not everyone knows about like the various like task force that operate within the CIA. So they're almost like a secret, like literally a secret organization. Where Alzarine, like if someone was like, hey, your Fadeless showed up and spied on my meeting with this other sept, Alzarine would be like, we do not acknowledge the existence of the organization known as the Fadeless. You know, they do not exist. It's the sort of thing, you know what I mean? So I really like that idea. So Alzarine denies the existence of the Fadeless. Marquis says, Fadeless should each have weird stuff done to their real eyes, like spikes through them or stitched shut or replaced with gems. Yeah, like so I don't want to give too much away, but Lloyd's character in Nomad is definitely somehow connected to the Fadeless, and we haven't really worked out exactly how, whether she was training to be a Fadeless, whether she was a Fadeless agent, but she has the same sight that the Fadeless do, where she's blind but she can see Astra. So she has like weird, like their eyes that kind of are glowing, but are kind of like this you can't see the pupils and stuff in them. Let's see here. Reminds me of the idea of Panopticon, instilling order by making people feel as though they're being watched at all times. Would love to know what an Alzarine prison or black site for political prisoners would look like. Yeah, definitely. Havoc Bringer guy. Fadeless equals Demir Guild. Yeah, it's definitely. I love the Demir Guild from Ravnica. Yeah, definitely that kind of flavor, that kind of feel. Jeff Doty says, might be getting too weird, but if you can lose your eyes through Astra Ascension, can that happen to other body parts? Is there a point where you can just lose physical form and become sentient Astra? I think so. Yeah, I like the idea that you can, and I haven't really thought through that completely 100%, but I definitely want... So one of the big influences on Harbinger is Dune and the Dune series, and... like, if you've ever read Dune is so weird in the best way possible, because it's like so far in the future and so alien, and yet it's so familiar. And it's like, you know, if you're a navigator in the the Spacer Guild, you take in so much of the spice melange that you literally evolve into something else. You don't even look human anymore. You're something else. You're another being. And there are no aliens in Dune, but there are humans that have become alien. And I've always liked that idea. And obviously Harbinger is inspired by Dune because you have the noble houses, you have, you know, melee weapons and magic and weird stuff, you know. So I definitely want to tinker with that and toy with that idea of like people transcending their physical form through the use of Astra, and it's maybe like this godlike tier of existence if you can master Astra. Mapronomicon, the music is so chill, reminds me of Nightmares on Wax, perfect RPG building music. Yeah, man, it's my go-to creative music. Marquis says, ooh, the ring. Since Astra is like a drug there, should have like mystics who are part Astra. That'd be dope. Yeah, that'd be a cool idea. Jeff says, I kind of like the idea of a leader or higher up, even not just being a person anymore, but just some Astra-crazed half-being. Yeah, like not even like a person, but like a presence. You know what I mean? Where it's just like yeah, they existed as a human at one point, but what are they really now? Mapronomicon says, I unfortunately found Dune to be a bit of a dry read. Well, I'm sorry. I love Dune. Marquis says, well, like a drug in my ring, not so much the canon one. Yeah, but there are Astra drugs. There's miasma, which Lloyd's character took in the last Harbinger session. Well, I actually don't know if he took it yet. I think he bought some, though. Spice Melange is also my drag name. Yes, absolutely. That's a good drag name. My drag name is Misty Lichyard. So, okay, a bit of a backstory. We're going to do a little tangent here, but I was working on the next adventure kit for Absolute Tabletop, and I was doing a roll table of minor locations, and I wanted like a graveyard that was like foggy, so I wrote Misty Lichyard, and then I instantly was just like, that's just a drag queen name, like Misty Lichyard. So anyway, my drag name is Misty Lichyard. Mark Wright, do the Fadeless have fighters that are like tier 1 spec ops that aren't spies, i.e. Navy SEALs? I imagine they probably do, or they might just lean on the existing Alzarine armed forces for stuff like that. Two planets drifting towards each other will both explode. Populations on both, aware of impending doom. Conflict arises because of that. That sounds cool. That's not really what we're talking about, but that sounds cool. You look puzzled, but you decide to open it. You suddenly become very afraid as you see an eye stitched on it. You have heard of... You ever get one of the Fadeless is coming for you and they know. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. Yeah, Jeff said, I don't think we've gotten to see the miasma in action yet, but Lloyd describing being high on Astra nonsense will be glorious for sure. Yes, definitely. Yeah, actually, it's funny. I had a big, long, my wife is often my sounding board when I have ideas, and I will just talk at her, and sometimes she'll be like, yeah, that's cool, and sometimes she'll be like, well, that's cool, but maybe try this. And one time we were out on a walk, and we just talked about space drugs for like an hour. I was just like, well, I have this idea that like Astra could be like, you know, this drug, and maybe you could take it to like enhance your spell casting, but it's also just used by people, you know, for different purposes or whatever. And so we just talked about like, what does it look like? How do you take it? All that kind of stuff. Anyway, it was just fun conversations to have. We were at a park too, and I'm sure that people were just like, those people keep walking by talking about like injecting themselves with space dust. All right. So actually, that's a good idea. Use miasma to enhance Astra abilities. So, okay, this is another Dune thing. The mentats in Dune, which are the human computers. Because okay, so Dune. Just real quick. Dune is so smart because it wants to be in the future, but it wants to be feudal, and so they think, why aren't there computers? Why aren't there robots? Why are people navigating with their brains? And they decided that, you know, there were these uprisings where they wiped out artificial intelligence, and computers and robots and all that kind of stuff are all outlawed. And so humans have to become computers, and that's why mentats exist. Mentats drink this stuff that like super open up their minds and allow them to basically compute like computers. There's also in The Expanse, which is, again, another thing that super inspired Harbinger. In The Expanse, there's these scenes where they're getting interrogated by Martian officers, and the Martian officers take these pills that like allow them to basically tell if you're lying without the use of a lie detector. It like super enhances their senses. Anyway, I like the idea that if you were like captured by a Fadeless agent and they were interrogating you, that they would take miasma to like enhance their abilities and be able to see clearer, you know, your heart rate, your what's going on in your mind. They would be able to pry into your brain and pull things out. Yeah, I really love that kind of stuff. Marquise says, I've never read Dune, but this stream has convinced me to. Dude, Marquise, listen to me. You gotta read Dune. I feel like you would love Dune because it's just so weird and so cool. I love, love, love Dune. Jeff Doty, the idea of a massively powerful secret police force that's constantly tripping on drugs is both amazing and terrifying. Yes, exactly. I love it. Yeah, Marquise, I'm so excited for them to do a good Dune movie, because the like the original Dune movie, it's not, I like parts of it, but it's so hard to capture the look and the feel and like the, I don't know, just like the lore of Dune without making it like a 4-hour movie or whatever. So I'm really like, Blade Runner 2049 was like my favorite movie of that year. So I'm excited to see what that guy does with Dune. Yeah, I'm going to start a book club. We're going to read all the Dune books by Frank Herbert. Okay. Leader is a presence rather than a figure. Some ancient Alzarene who has transcended their physical body. Maybe it's multiple people. Cool, yeah. Sometimes on these streams, I will have to get quiet so I can just write some stuff down. So I apologize if I ever just like stop paying attention to the chat and just start typing stuff. But I think you guys can see. Oh yeah, you guys can see it. Okay, cool. Do you like fantasy or sci-fi better? I go back and forth. I think I generally like fantasy a little bit better, but well, I don't know, because as soon as I say that, I'm like, no, I like sci-fi better. So it's like it's an even 50-50 split for me on that. I think I like reading fantasy a little bit better, but I also love reading sci-fi too. So I don't know, man. It's pretty even split for me. Oh Lord, I just got a news alert. Sorry, it's hard to get those sometimes. Read The Frontier Saga by Rick Brown. Cool, I'll look into that. Yeah, still hanging around, but I'm working on my Mononoke stuff as I'm listening. Might as well catch the inspiration while the lo-fi's out. Yeah, dude. Hit it. While that lo-fi is rocking and rolling. Yeah, like a ghost AI that's made up of dead members of Fadeless. Yeah, and that's, you know, in Harbinger, the specters are ghosts. They're kind of like ghosts. They, again, inspired by Dune, the human thinking brain. They will take the consciousness, the spirit of a dead person, and use that as a way to compute things. They'll turn it into a machine brain, essentially. So let's see here. So the powerful Mancers and Spy Masters, secret police spies operating autonomously from Alzarine, low-level enforcers, or do they employ sovereign armed forces? High-ranking members are blind. They have lost their sight but see Astra auras. They use yellow Astra abilities to peer into minds and spy across the known orbits. Other nobles and powerful figures employ Mancers to combat Fadeless interjection. Alzarine denies the existence of the Fadeless. They use miasma, which is like a drug. We'll say here. Use miasma to enhance Astra abilities. The leader is a presence rather than a figure. Some ancient Alzarine Mancer who has transcended their physical body. Maybe it's multiple people. I like the idea that it's like a presence made up of like multiple people. That's kind of a cool idea. The other thing I want to put here is usually operate in pairs. One more cerebral, the other more martial. So like one, you know, they always work in pairs. One of them would be an adept and the other one would be an Aphelion, you know what I mean? Or a siphon, you know, they'd be more about physical, like, you know, enforcement. And the other would be more about interrogating, espionage, infiltration, that sort of thing. I want them to have some method for destroying themselves or their bodies if captured, killed. So like some sort of fail-safe where if they get killed, they don't leave a trace. Or if they get captured, they can elect to, you know, like cyanide capsule themselves. Okay, cool. I think that's some good stuff to go on here. We might go back and flesh this kind of stuff out depending on how much time we have left here, but I do want to get into some other stuff here. So Sovereign Standing Army. Okay, so the idea here is that Alzarine selects powerful and skillful warriors from all across the known orbits who can be called into service in times of need. Jeff says, maybe as each new high-ranking manager transcends, instead of becoming their own entity, they add their transcended Astra Spirit to the Fadeless leader conglomerate. Yeah, maybe, hey, just hypercharge their Fade to Astra Bomb themselves. Yeah, that could be an option for sure. And I like the idea that, like, if you're a high enough ranking Fadeless and you die, instead of dying, you lend your spirit and your consciousness to this presence, which we'll come up with a cool name for. Okay. Sovereign Standing Army. This Standing Army must Let's see. The soldiers of this army must place loyalty to the sovereign above their oaths to their own sept. This creates conflict in times of war between septs when oath sworn are forced to fight against their own sept. I'm confused. What sort of world is this set in? So it's set in the world of Harbinger, which you can check out at harbingerrpg.com. That's a sci-fi fantasy world. Okay. Ooh, and I think this standing army has Dragoon armor. Which, Dragoon armor is like the power armor of Harbinger. They're these ancient, Astra-powered exoskeletons that enhance the physical abilities and protect the wearer. And they're incredibly rare, and most septs will only have a few suits of Dragoon armor for their like very high-ranking Oathsworn. I like the idea that this army that can be called to the Sovereign is like mostly dudes in Dragoon armor, and that's one of the reasons why they're so effective at like quelling rebellions and like protecting the Sovereign. So we'll say mostly people in Dragoon armor. And we'll have to come up with a name for this army. I'm actually not feeling this song. I might switch it. That's okay. I like a little bit of vocals in my chill hop, but not a ton. And that's why I like chill hop, is because it's very sparse with its vocals, and so it's not as distracting for me. I find that stuff like that that doesn't have vocals is better for me when I'm trying to be creative, trying to focus. All right, so we're just gonna list some possible names here for this standing army. These are all like super basic, boring names, but I'm just kind of getting some ideas out there. Hang on, I finished my grapefruit Italian soda, so I'm gonna open a seltzer water here. Get some lime, yeah. By the way, while I have a captive audience, I'm playing Mecha Hack on my channel tonight at 7 Pacific time. Tim from Tabletop Terrors is going to run a one-on-one Mecha Hack game for me because I haven't been able to play the Mecha Hack yet. And it's such a bummer to not play a system that you designed. Ooh, yeah, the marshals. I like marshals. Paul Baker, damn, how long have you been on and are putting it on YouTube so I catch up? I've been on for about 40 minutes, and yeah, it'll be on YouTube. That's I don't know why people always ask that. That's if you stream on YouTube, it's there. It'll be there. It's not like Twitch where it like potentially like goes away after a while. If you stream to YouTube, it's also recording to YouTube, so you never have to worry about it not being there. It'll be here as soon as I'm done. You'll be able to watch it. Okay, we might come back to that. It's rare that the army is summoned. Only a dozen or so times in its history. Mostly, it's an honorary position. Michael Duncan, honestly, I really like Oathsworn as their name. Yeah, the problem with that is that an Oathsworn, it's already a thing in Harbinger. One of the backgrounds is called Oathsworn, and it's basically like you're a knight. Oh, maybe they're called knights. The something knights. An Oathsworn is basically someone who has sworn themselves to a sept. So you're like a knight. So I don't want to call them Oathsworn because that's kind of already a thing, if that makes sense. So I think I like the idea of calling them knights, or like dragoons or something. Yeah, I don't want to call them dragoons because the armor is called dragoon armor. So, but something like sovereign knights, or we'll come up with something. It's not that's the important thing about like world building and being creative is like if you're caught on something, like pull yourself free of it and move on. You can always come back to it. If you stumble into something, it's okay to get up and move on from it before you come back. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of the basic idea. I just like the idea of like, yeah, like the sovereign has its own forces and can very easily protect itself, but it also has the option of assembling this army in times of great need. So, all right. So that's some cool stuff. All right, so let's talk about the drift market. So the drift market is, like I said, it's kind of this, it's not a moon. It's kind of all these like, these ships and like asteroids and stuff kind of lashed together. And it's a place where ships can dock. It's where you can buy anything in the world. It's where you buy weapons, ammunition, fuel, void ships. It's one of the few places where you can go and try to buy a void ship. Excuse me. Drugs, slaves, anything like that. The drift market is does not necessarily hold itself to the credos of the sovereign and the septs. It is controlled by Sept Larkin, but Sept Larkin in and of itself, it's kind of an anomaly. Sept Larkin they don't even have a leader. They're ruled by a council called the Council of the Drifting Kings. And the drift market is kind of their place, their seat, their throne. The drift market can move, but it's mostly found orbiting Bastion among inside the ring itself. So the things I kind of want to talk about are like it's easy enough to say like, oh, the drift market, there's no laws and there's no order, but then that would just lead to violence and chaos and instability. And when you're trying to run a business like Sept Larkin is, that just won't fly. So I want to talk about how does the drift market operate. The first thing we're going to talk about is the no pulsars rule. Upon entering the drift market, all pulsars are confiscated. Pulsars, I spoke on, yeah. Pulsars are the ballistic weapons of Harbinger. So they're ballistic weapons in that they fire a physical round, but the round itself is wreathed in Astra, and so they're kind of a cross between like a laser gun and a ballistic weapon. So we see that in sci-fi all the time, like, oh, it's wreathed in plasma or whatever. Anyway, pulsars can punch holes through void ship hulls, and though it would be rare to misfire and punch a hole and kill everybody, if your if you go aboard the drift market, the first thing you do is deposit all of your pulsers. You cannot bring pulsers aboard the drift market, and that is very important. If you go to buy a pulsar on the drift market, there's no ammo inside of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very tightly regulated of, like, you cannot carry a loaded pulsar onto the drift market, because if a gunfight breaks out, everyone dies because we're floating in space. So, excuse me. Jeez. Take a drink here. There's some kind of law enforcement. Loose, sparse, but it exists in order to maintain Sept Larkin's interests and protect their assets. Before entering the drift market, are there scanners, like an airport check? I don't imagine that there are scanners, but I'm sure, I think there are mancers that are specifically, like, you know, sitting there, like, using spells or something too. So let's write that down. Mancers are employed to find pulsars David Weaver, are you chipped? That way you get your pulsar back instead of someone else's. I mean, yeah, they have a system for giving you your pulsar back. You guys focus on the weirdest things. Yes, they would have some sort of system so that it's like, you know, they mark it or label it or whatever and put it, you know, somewhere so you can get it back. It's like a coat check, you know, coat check. You go drop your coat off, you get your coat back. Like, that's the least of their worries. Mancers are employed to find pulsars being concealed, smuggled in. Maybe they even read people's minds as they enter to see if they're hiding anything. We'll tinker with that. Smith's Forge Gaming. Hey, that's Jason. How's it going, man? Looking forward to AtCon. So yeah, I imagine that there's some kind of like law enforcement. They're basically just guys that are given the ability to sort of maintain order on the drift market. So it's like, you know, if a brawl breaks out, they're probably not going to intervene. But if someone starts blasting off Astra, yeah, they're probably going to stop you. Or if you steal from someone, or if you rip off Sept Larkin, yeah, they're going to stop you. That would be probably their own, that would be their main thing, is just like, you guys can do whatever you want, but if you start trying to blow holes in the side of the drift market, if you start trying to rip off Sept Larkin, if you're mistreating the people that work here, then yeah, we're probably going to step in, intervene, and kick your ass out. There might be a monetary unit only applicable within the drift. Unfortunately, a septum is already taken by the Elder Scrolls. No, they probably just deal in glint, like everywhere else. Like, glint is the main currency of Harbinger. But they probably also do a lot of trade. So yeah, glint is important, but I imagine that a lot of the vendors in the drift market would be interested in trading a lot more readily than they would in just you walking up and spending glint, if that makes sense, because then they have more stuff to hawk and sell and all that kind of stuff. And things like tech and salvage are like very important in Harbinger. So yeah, I imagine bartering is kind of a big thing. So vendors selling everything from weapons to void ship parts to fuel to drugs to slaves to Also, a prime spot to hire mercenaries. Oh, hey, I have an idea. Enforcers are all baromechs. Maybe that might be kind of cool. Maybe instead of having guards, maybe Sept Larkin employs baromechs. And the baromechs are just like very simply programmed to like intervene if something happens, but they mostly just kind of sit there and like scan and look around and stuff. So maybe enforcers are all baromechs, maybe not all baromechs, but maybe like mostly baromechs. I kind of like that idea. Like, I love the idea of like a dude coming up to you and he's like, you know, orders you to basically deposit your pulsers. And he's just like a dude with like a glancer, like sitting there with like a clipboard, but he's flanked by two huge baromech enforcers with like pulsar arms. They're just like, you know, that kind of thing. Let's see here. What else do I want to talk about? Yo, man, have you ever considered writing a fantasy series? You have cool ideas. I'm not really interested in writing books. I like writing RPG stuff more. I like giving people the tools to make their own stories rather than tell a story. Does that make sense? Like, I tried for a long time to write books and short stories and stuff, and I do like writing fiction from time to time. Like, I write short stories in the Harbinger universe. I'm actually working on a couple of them right now, but my main thing that I really like writing is RPGs. I like designing games, I like building lore, building worlds, and then giving it to people for them to make their own thing with it. I get my chief joy from that. Jeff says, I dig the baromech idea. Makes it more neutral too, and keeping with the idea of the place. No human bias to sneak in. Exactly. And I feel like that would be like, Sept Larkin is like the ultimate like sort of like neutral party. They've never really gotten themselves involved in any wars. They're really just in it to sort of like do their thing, sell their goods, make their money, secretly control most of the ring. And so I feel like baromechs really lend themselves to that idea. If the structure of the market is so fragile that weapons can't be approved in, why would another Sept not sabotage it, says Jason. Because Larkin is an incredibly powerful Sept that controls a lot of the economy in the known orbits. So just because something is fragile doesn't necessarily mean that it's vulnerable. You know what I mean? Like, the ramifications and side effects of someone deciding to sabotage or destroy the drift market are far greater than whatever weird benefit you would get from it. So yeah, potentially you could have, you know, a conflict where the drift market is in danger. Someone tries to sabotage it. Someone tries to destroy it. But whoever that party is would be sought out by people like the Fadeless, who protect Alzarine's interest, and it's in Alzarine's interest to let Sept Larkin do its thing and continue to maintain the economy of the known orbits. Everything is fragile. Everything is tenuous. Everything can be destroyed. That doesn't mean that it's always the right or smart thing to do it. Not all shields are physical. You know what I mean? So that's sort of the thing there. As a novel and short story writer, my writings are so far away from my fantasy stuff. I hate writing fantasy, but love doing fantasy RPG writing, which is odd. Yeah, I do. I like writing fantasy. It's really hard to build a cohesive world and then tell a story in it. And that's one of the reasons why I love RPGs, is because telling a story collaboratively together, like on the fly, is more rewarding to me than trying to structure one myself. Does that make sense? So it's like, I really do love writing, and for the longest time, I like wanted to be a novelist and fiction writer. And I sort of stumbled into writing for RPGs out of college, and it's just taken off from there. And I love doing it. It's like, it's the thing I love doing the most. It is my passion. It's my professional pursuit. It's what I really, really like doing. Jason Scranton, the spice must flow. Exactly. It would be like someone in Dune destroying Arrakis. Like, yeah, you can walk up and nuke a planet, but you just destroyed the prime source of the spice melange, which everyone uses to go everywhere. It's what they use to fold space to get across the universe. So whoever did that, like, first of all, what's the benefit? Second of all, everyone's gonna kill you, you know, because you destroyed all the spice. So anyway, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that there's an order to things. There's a system in place. There's an economy here that everyone benefits from. Just because Sept Larkin controls the drift market doesn't mean that the other Septs don't benefit from it. Doesn't mean that the other Septs don't have a vested interest in maintaining that space. So, just something to think about. Jeff says, not to mention, anytime as a GM you can force players to voluntarily give up their weapons, you got to take that chance. The reason that reason is reason enough for me. Absolutely, man. I mean, in the last Nomad campaign, the Nomads went into the migrant fleet of Sept Verloren, and they had to give up their pulsars when they went on the Last Breath, which is the capital ship. And then there was a Baromech uprising, and none of them have pulsars, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next session. But yeah, take your players' weapons away if you can, you know, if it makes sense. Not all the time, but it's a cool, it's a challenge. It's a cool tool. It's a tool in your Game Master toolbox. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, we're gonna go for just a couple more minutes here, guys. So I like the idea that enforcers are mostly Baromechs. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, vendors. Vendors on the drift market each rent a space from Sept Larkin. The economy of these spaces and the constant shuffling of vendors is a economic subsystem in and of itself. Almost like a rich neighborhood and slums. There are areas of the drift market that are cheap to rent vendor space in, but that receive less attention and less support from Sept Larkin and the Baromech enforcers. So I like the idea, like, you might get into the drift market and be able to sell your stuff, but where are you going to be set up, you know? Are you going to be in, like, prime territory, or are you going to be, like, in the back of the ship? Jeff says, I agree, you're hurting everyone, including yourself, by targeting a place like the drift market. An open natural trading post is a valuable tool to everyone. Yeah, exactly. Well, and, like, yes, the Septs have laws that they kind of follow, but they still want to be able to do things like go buy slaves or, you know, sell illegal weapons, that sort of thing. Like, the drift market is the place to do that. You know, places like that exist in our world, you know, both physical, tangible, and otherwise. And those places are not shut down for a very specific reason. So, all right, guys, cool. So just to recap here, we did a little bit of world building today. We're talking about Harbinger, the sci-fi fantasy world that is being developed alongside a system that is based on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. You can check it out at harbingerrpg.com. We talked a little bit about the Fadeless, the secret police of the current Sovereign. The Sovereign is sort of like the house that's in charge. We talked about the standing army of the Sovereign, which they can call into action in times of great need. And we talked about the drift market, this sort of like Mos Eisley spaceport type bazaar market that is kind of a wretched hive of scum and villainy, but is also a place that is well maintained and protected. So, yeah. thank you guys for coming and hanging out, listening to some lo-fi music, and doing some hi-fi creativity. I'm going to try and do this every Thursday. The topics are going to run the gambit. We're going to be doing all kinds of different things. Most weeks I will put up either a poll or tell you guys what we're going to be talking about on my Facebook as well as my Twitter. The links for both of those are down in the description. And yeah, we're just going to keep this up. We're going to try to go for an hour every Thursday at 2. You guys can see the kind of stuff that I'm working in. I can give you insight into game design. We can talk about how to prep for games, how to world build, how to craft a campaign, how to build characters, just stuff like that. We're just going to talk about RPGs and creativity and listen to some cool music. So yeah, that's going to be it for me, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Happy gaming all. And make sure that you tune in tonight at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for a Mecha Hack one-shot DM'd by my good friend Tim Carney from Tabletop Terrors. So take care, happy gaming all, and we'll see you tonight.